In this video, I'm going to talk about the 5 big ideas that went into making JAMM, just another map maker. The first idea was to focus on simplicity. I wanted to look at the user interface and make it simple and straightforward so a new user could get up to speed in as little as 2 minutes. The second idea is speed. I wanted to create tools that assisted the user in making the 3D maps so that you could make a 3D battle map in 5 minutes. The third idea was look and feel. I wanted to be able to have options so you can customize the mood of your map, change the colors, the weather, the grid. The map could be made uniquely yours. The fourth idea is 3D immersion. Since this is a 3D world generator, I wanted to create tools that were easy to capture first-person 3D views of the scene if you wanted to share those with the party. And the last idea was two-dimensional assets. While this is a 3D map maker, I wanted everyone to be able to reuse their two-dimensional assets that they may have on their computer already. So now we'll start the app and we'll see how those 5 big ideas were carried out. So if you do a quick start, you'll see a top-down view of a map that is 30 by 20 squares. I took the tools that you're going to use most often and I placed those front and center at the bottom of the window here. There are 3 palettes that you can either click on these circles or you can hit the spacebar to cycle through those quickly. Each palette has 9 components that you can either click on or hit the number on your keypad. So this first tool palette is the 9 elements that go into map making. Currently we have everything painted as grass, but you could paint with cliffs or you can paint with lava. And you can shape your 3-dimensional world. The second tool palette is the natural elements. So this is trees and plants, spires to debris, and beacons to torch. 3 subgroups that are organized again by height. Click on them and you can paint with those as well. The third tool palette is built structures. So this is from building houses or inns or stables, or building components. So if you don't want a full house or a full structure, you can kind of create the components that make that up. So maybe it's a ruin. The last 3 are your ships, your fences, and your bridges. So you can see most of the tools that you're going to be using are here at the bottom. You can change between them quickly. You can hit numbers to activate them, or you can click on them with your mouse. And 90% of what you need is right here. If you come up here to this rectangle, you'll see this is how you can control the look and feel of your map. So you'll have access to 8 weather components, different types of grids, and color themes. Clicking that rectangle makes that side window open and close. So if you come over here to the right side and click on that rectangle, you'll see this is where the 2-dimensional assets are stored. This looks at your computer and it populates the folders that are in that subfolder, and then by clicking on these you'll have access to the content within, and then you can come in here and place assets to move around. At the top you have 3 buttons to control the sun, to full day, to afternoon, to night. Over here you have the 3 different camera modes that you can use to build with. We're currently in perspective maps, so you can see the sides of cliffs and mountains and trees. If you click O for orthographic, everything is straight down, so you don't see the walls anymore, and this is more like a 2-dimensional map. The third camera setting drops down into the world, and you can walk around the space, experience it. You can activate a photo mode and take pictures that then save as PNGs to your computer so you can share this with the party. And the last piece is this camera mode, which is how you export your battle map. You can either export a perspective or orthographic. You have different resolutions of map, so if you're online you may want to use 140 pixels per square, and that allows you to kind of zoom in and out and still have some quality. 70 might work if you're on a TV screen or you're not going to be zooming in online. And then there's a couple other options you can select, and then you can export map, and it saves the map to your computer. The map name itself will have the size of the map, the name of the map, and also what percent to print at if you want a 1:1 scale. So 1 square would be 1 inch. And that's built into the file name just to make life a little easier. So from the idea number 1, simplicity, walk through the user interface. We have our 3 palettes here. We have our look and feel window to the left, and we have our 2D assets to the right. We have our sun, export, and then our camera modes. The next piece I want to talk about is the speed. And you can probably see a little bit of that through that first piece, but I'm going to talk about some of the tools and what makes them unique. So to do this, I'm going to paint a couple different foundations here. I got some stone, I got some dirt, and I'll have grass over here. If I come in here to the third tool palette, to walls, if I click on the wall, I draw one here. I'll do a 3D view here so you can see that better. It placed kind of a house wall. If I do this over stone, it'll make a stone wall. If I do it over dirt, it'll make more of a barn structure. So if you don't really care which wall type is being created, you can just use the automatic function of it. If you want to have more control, you can go to this up arrow and manually select which wall you want. So if you want that stone wall drawn on the grass, you can do that. The same applies for doors and windows and floors. So you have some intelligence that's built into it just to kind of help speed up the process if you're just trying to knock out a map really quickly. But you can always come in here and do an override and access other types of floors that you may not have in automatic mode. If we look at the second palette, we're going to look at trees, and you see this up at the top already, but as you paint with them, it'll go between maybe 16, 20 different types of trees, shapes, sizes, hues, different states if they're fallen over. So you don't have to worry about selecting a bunch of buttons to place trees. But if you do want to have more control, you can paint a forest of pine trees, and I'll paint several different variations of those pine trees, but it'll leave out all the other types of trees. Same goes for fields and plants. For this one, I'm going to clean up the scene, and to do that, I'll just use the right mouse button to delete the elements. For 2-dimensional objects, there's a trash can icon, and again, you can't delete the element, but you can paint over those. I'll place a small little pond here, and we'll talk about how the plants are intelligent. If you start painting with it, there's different variations that get created. If you hit a water's edge, you start getting reeds and a little bit of lily pads, and if you come out to the middle, you get that. So this allows you to kind of do one of these, just kind of randomly draw, and you don't have to worry about lily pads showing up on the grass or grass showing up in the middle of the water. Trees also have that ability that when you hit a water's edge, a different type come in, and you'll get trees that have some Spanish moss. You see some of the root structure exposed if a tree happens to get close to the water. The last piece for speed, essentially we're painting each one of these squares when you're using the element tools, but each square talks to its 8 neighbors, and they solve for what that needs to look like. So then if the tool comes up next to water, it creates kind of a little fringe there. If you put some stone up by the water, it might create a retaining wall around it. You could clean up some of the grass again with the right mouse button. You can see as cliff touches other cliff, it cleans up with itself. So some of that intelligence is just focusing based on speed. So you don't have to find the right piece to place. You could just kind of do one of these, and it's smart enough, and it kind of interprets what you're trying to do. For the third idea, we're going to talk about look and feel. Here you have 8 different types of weather that you can bring in, and these all stack on top of each other. So if you want to add a bunch of different effects, you can do that. And then maybe you want to come down here and you want to change your grid. And then you can come down here and start changing the color palettes. And each color palette reacts to the sun settings a little differently. And the weather takes that into consideration. So you might have just a whole slew of different kind of combinations that you can use here. We showed off the 3D immersion earlier, which leaves the fourth one, which is the two-dimensional assets. When you place these onto the scene, it has the name of the asset, the ability to move it around. You can rotate it, or you can access a second menu where you can change the alpha or the size. Or if you want to place something off the ground, you can bump it up to level 1, level 2, level 3. You can kind of move your two-dimensional asset in the third dimension. If you go back, you can see the name of it is Cart1, and I have these brackets 6x6. So if you name your file with a bracket and then a number X and then another number, it will actually come into the scene at that scale. So then you don't have to worry about scaling objects up and down. If you always use this crystal at 15 by 15, just put that in the file name, it goes away. So that's just a really quick look at how you use JAMM. We haven't talked about the menu here. There is a new map generator, so if you're going to be creating a lot of mountain scenes and you're carving into the mountains, instead of painting every tile with the mountain, you can just select mountain here, give it a name, and give it a width 30 by 20, create map. It builds that, and then you can come in here with your stone and just start carving. So it's a way to get up and running pretty quickly. Also, it chooses a grid that has the stone texture to it, so it gives a little bit more definition to your caves. Come in here and say if you want a dirt map. It just paints everything with dirt. So then you can come in here and draw on top of that. When you go to save, it lists all of the maps that you have saved along with the sizes of the map. Then up here is a thumbnail that gets saved along with that map. So later on, when you're loading your map, you get a visual library of all the maps that you've created, the names, the size. You can click and load your maps. When a map loads with two-dimensional assets, I automatically have those show these kind of graphics, and you can just mouse over to make those go away. I do this so you don't lose track of where your two-dimensional assets are in your map. Because you may forget that, oh yeah, I had an override, I had this cool texture that I had over the entire map. I don't remember where I inserted it. So when you load it, all of those become visible. You can also look at the controls. I have a tutorial built into the app for quick reference, and some sound and visual quality options that you can play around with. So you see here, this is a little different than the previous themes, kind of the fantasy themes. This is a little bit more urban. There are some things to talk about when it comes to these other genres. And we haven't talked about the metal. You can see there's some vertical lines here and a question mark, and that is because metals react differently to the natural elements. These are something that is created and manufactured. So this is, if you put metal in a mountain, you get your science fiction base, your corridors and your rooms. If you put it in a cliff or adjacent to a cliff, you get these little outposts where there's structures built outside of the cliffs and tunnels are dug inside of the cliffs. If you use it with stone, you get a street facade, which we saw in the past scene there. Or if you have a dirt, if you place metal, you can create orc encampments. You can either place those or you can drag and make long houses or larger structures. So it's just a fun way to add something different. So here you see nothing's happening because everything to the right of it doesn't react to the grass. So you can use the grass, water, and lava. That if for some reason you want orcs and you want a city, you can use both of those, but you probably want to use grass, water, and lava to some degree in between those. So over here, bet on it. Create a 3D orc structure, and these are randomly generated. See, there's different corners that come together. So if you have a small village, each hut will be unique. If you want that streetscape, you can paint some buildings in, has some unique rooftop elements, some street facades. Get some mountain in here. You can see it kind of creates that sci-fi feel. And then when you have a metal foundation that's placed here, when you use things like walls, you'll have access to your sci-fi walls, doors, and windows, or floors. So that gives you a taste of what you can have with the metal. And to end this video, I want to talk just very briefly about how I use some of these tools to create my map and what that process looks like. I have a map tools folder, so this is where you can get some vignette settings, or you can get your compass or your scale that you can drag in, but I have these battle areas, and that helps me a lot when I'm creating these maps. And those are just 2D elements that you drag in here, and as you're thinking about what kind of battle is taking place, you think about how many characters are involved, how many monsters are involved, the size of the monsters, and you can place them, and then you can kind of model around those circles. And then you know you're not giving them too much area, which could slow down the game if characters start wandering too far from it and the battle starts to split up a little bit. And then when I'm done, you can either delete them, or one thing I didn't talk about is all the two-dimensional assets are put on a layer, and you can always toggle those off. So in this case, I might drag it over, paint some mountains around it, paint some cliffs over here, and kind of infill, and then I know that this will be a good battle map size for a huge battle event. Of course, it doesn't have to be perfectly circular like I made it. It could be more rectilinear. But I hope all these tools are helpful. I hope they allow you to get some of those thoughts that you might have onto the computer to share with a party, whether it's in map form or it's in the 3D immersion. And I hope you really enjoy what we put together in JAMM. And if you have any other additional thoughts or comments, I'm open to evolving this app over time. So please let me know. Thank you.